I know we want to spend as much time as we can out on the road, but it's always worth spending just a few minutes just checking your bike over before you go out as well. So the first thing I would look at when I'm looking at my bike is petrol. Make sure you know your route, make sure you know where your petrol stops are. There's nothing worse than being out on the road and that petrol light comes on and you're worrying more about that petrol light than you are on the hazards on the road. So make sure, as I say, you've got sufficient petrol for your journey. Oil, that's a very, very quick check. While the bike is on the side stand here, most modern bikes have got the little window, so it's just a case of looking into that window and looking at the oil levels in there as well. Be careful when you're putting oil in. It's just as dangerous to put too much oil in certain high performance engines as too little. So water, a lot of bikes are water cooled now, so just make sure, again, that'll be just a visual check, so a second or so check to make sure you've got sufficient water in the bike so you don't break down on your ride out. Electrics is another vital important thing to check on your bike. I generally start at the front of the bike and then work backwards. So when you start at the front, check that your lights are working, your indicators are working. Come to your gauges to make sure when you start the bike all your gauges are working, and then just work backwards, checking the bike as you go along. The lights at the front are obviously very, very important to make sure you're visible and people can see you. Your indicators and your brake lights are vitally important because it gives your intention to other road users. We've talked about rubber and tyres in other short clips, and I'll show you in those other clips how you can check your tyres. The other thing I talk about before you go out, and we've talked about this in the other clips as well, is the environment that you're going into. Make sure you know where you're going, you know where your stops are, you plan your stops, you know your route, and you know the weather conditions when you're on your ride out. And lastly is damage to the bike. Just have a quick visual check over the bike to make sure there's nothing hanging off or any damage to the bike that will upset the balance or your control of the bike. And if it is, as I say, take the bike in, get it checked professionally.